Advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live and a special edition of Parent to Parent. I am Shannon Penrod and I identify as a proud pony. That is, now there's a movie coming out called Ponies and they're just wrecking my life because now it means person of no interest. What are you going to do? But for us, pony means parent of neurodiverse individual. Those are the words that my son gives me to use when talking about my relationship to his diagnosis. I know those aren't everybody's words but those are the words that he has given me. So those are the words that I'm going to use until he tells me to use different words. But anyway, I'm proud to be part of this community. And we always say here at Autism Live that our mission is to provide information and inspiration to that larger autism community that starts, of course, with individuals who identify as being on the spectrum, neurodivergent, neurodiverse, whatever words, autistic, with autism, whatever words. We know that identity is huge, and the words that you use to say your identity are very important to us. We want to be all inclusive of that. And of course, we include those people's opinions and thoughts and concerns, because that's vital. But we also include in our conversation everyone who loves those individuals. That's really what we're about here, because we believe that if we support that entire community, that we will get further for the rights and the ability to thrive for those individuals. So that's really what we're about. And I'm in that group of loving individuals who are on the spectrum. And that's really the place that I'm coming from. So we are live right now. Today is Wednesday, January 21st, 2026. Boy, that's hard to even say. But we're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Our fabulous Chris Desmond. Oh my gosh. Thank everything and the stars above for Chris Desmond. He's showing you some of the places that you can be watching the show or listening to the show. We have two YouTube channels, and we're on Facebook, YouTube, and, all the things. But we have two YouTube channels. There's the Autism Live YouTube channel, and there is the Ask Dr. Doreen YouTube channel. We love it when you subscribe to those and check out, because we're video and audio on those platforms, and there's 15 years of content there. So hopefully you'll find something that's of interest to you. Of course, when you don't find the answer to the question, or even the question that you're asking, write into us. And you can write into us right now on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, or you can email me directly, Shannon at autism-live.com. Now, we also know that the vast majority of you listen to us in podcasts because that's the speed of life right now. You want to listen while you're doing other things, whether that's driving, exercising, doing dishes, whatever. So we are available as a free download wherever you get your podcasts. And we're very proud to be able to do that. Now, it does mean that you're going to get ads when you download, because that's how we make it free for you. And we hope you embrace that and that's woohoo, good for you. If that is annoying on whatever level and you're like, oh, I just wish that I could have this without the advertising, there is a way, there is a path, my friends. It's glow.fm/autism-live. Now, that's a little bit of a misnomer because it makes it sound like it's just Autism Live. No, my friends, it's everything we do here at the Autism Network. It's Autism Live. It's Ask Dr. Doreen. It's all the things. So check that out. It's $5 a month, and it shows up in your inbox anytime we do a new show, and it's ad-free. So that's a pretty good deal. All righty then. Want to get started today. And lately my mindset, every year at the start of the new year, I'm like, okay, what haven't we done? What do we need to do? And by the way, I'm taking suggestions. And I love Parker writes to me and says, Shannon, I'd like for you to do shows about this. Parker, that's so helpful to me. But I'm also thinking, what do we have control over, right? And what can I give you that might help you? So that's really what today's show was born from, is that we use a phrase here on all the shows that we do that we say that every waking hour needs to be an educationally enriched, fun environment. I left the word fun out, but that's because it's always implied. But an educationally enriched environment every waking hour. And sometimes I say that and people go, oh, that sounds like work that for me, and it sounds like work for my child. Well, it definitely should not be work for your child. Let's be clear about that. It should be just like fun off the rails. Like, let me just say, Disneyland is an educationally enriched, fun environment. You're constantly having opportunities to interact with something from which you can learn, right? That's really what we're talking about. Now, is it work for the parent? I think that it is if you don't have some ideas about how to do it and how to do it successfully. It could end up being work, and we don't want it to be work for you. You got enough work, right? And the truth is that when we engage in that educationally enriched environment, we'll have a better connection with our child. Our child will absorb things that they will learn that will help them throughout their lives. And it really builds that communication. And I don't mean just talking. I mean communication with your child. So that's why it's super duper important. I hear parents a lot of times will say to me, well, they just need downtime. And I often will hear that and then say to the parent, how's that working out? Like, what does that actually look like for your child? And what's the end result of that? And what I hear so often is parents will say, oh, well, they had a meltdown, they had a tantrum, I got hit, and then I try to say, well, I think when we say downtime, you need downtime, but our kids are looking for something. And if they don't find it in their environment, our kids are brilliant and they will find it inside, right? And if that becomes more exciting, what's on the inside, then they kind of tune us out. And while I don't think that creative space on the inside is a bad space at all, some of our creative geniuses spend a great deal of time on that inside. But if you have not learned skills to be able to say to someone in a way that's meaningful, whether it's through sign or PECs or hitting a button on an AAC device or producing the sounds to say, I need help, then only being in that internal space and never learning how to do that is going to, at some point, be to your detriment. So we want to make sure we give everybody their best opportunity to learn the things so that, first of all, they can find what they're passionate about, that they can seek the thing. I watched the new Star Trek last night, right? And I was like, boldly go where no one has gone before. Isn't that what we all want for our kids? Of course. Seek out new life. We want them to find the things that they're passionate about. But if we don't give them an opportunity to figure out what that is, we might sell them short, and we don't want to do that. Okay, let's go on. Let's dig in here, right? But feel free to write in. The chat is open. I'm taking questions about this or anything else. Oh, there we go. Okay, so what is the goal? Why are we doing this educationally enriched environment? And I chose this picture because I thought it symbolizes exactly what I want to talk about today. That, you can put a child into a swing and they're going to have a certain level of enjoyment depending on who they are. I'm somebody that I get motion sickness thinking about being on a stationary bicycle, okay? And I know there are kids in my family that if you put them on a swing and you swing them too fast, they literally will have motion sickness and shake almost like a mini seizure, right? It's not fun. Whereas other kids just love it. So let's remember that for everybody, there's a spectrum of, is this activity good for them? But even then, you can put somebody in a swing and you can swing them mindlessly, right? You can do that. But if you kind of up your game and interact, and in this picture, for those of you listening in podcasts, there's a very small child who's in the swing and a daddy is swinging her. And when she gets close to him, he's giving her a kiss, which is making her laugh. Now that's that's how we up the game. Like, we could just swing, but by having that little bit of interaction Now we really truly have made this an educationally enriched environment. They're learning that, oh, when I get close, this thing is going to happen. It's cause and effect. So when I say making it educationally enriched, I'm not talking about doing logarithms. I'm talking about having all kinds of circumstances where in the natural environment, you're interacting with your child or giving them an opportunity to interact with something that isn't you, that will bring joy, spark inspiration, teach new things, right? And it can be as simple as this, that we add some little element to the swinging so that there is a level of connection. That's the goal, because that's how the little synapses are going to wake up and your child is going to make connections that are good for them. And by the way, this is good for all kids, not just kids on the spectrum, but it's especially good for kids on the spectrum, because I do think that their brain is supercharged to, some of them, they can't take too much input, right? Which is why they got a sensory, they're like, ooh, that's too much sensory. But other kids, they're craving a sensory experience, right? And so I do think that giving, for the kids that are overreactive, that it's too much sensory, if they have something to focus on, how much research has been done and how much anecdotal have we heard from people on the spectrum who are like, well, I have a problem with this, but if I have something I love to focus on, I can tune this out. And then I'm focused on the thing that I love. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, the people who are sensory seekers are like, I can't concentrate unless I've got something to feel or hold. But if you give me something to focus on, that kind of tamps down. So part of the reason why we do this. Okay, so I got 20 things for you to help you to make every waking hour an educationally enriched environment. Even if you only do one, then your life is going to get better. Their life is going to get better. So number one is create a team, because I think a lot of parents think, well, I have to do this completely by myself. And let me just tell you, I don't think there's anyone on this planet who can. Boy, I've seen some amazing moms who certainly have tried and done a really good job. But would I like it if they had more support? Sure. And by the way, I don't mean to say just moms. I know at least a couple of dads that really tried to, go this alone and then realized I need some help and support here. And what can the team possibly look like? If you're trying to say every waking hour of this child's life needs to be fun and educational, but number one, it can't be just you, because sometimes you have to go to the restroom, right? Sometimes you have to eat. Sometimes you have to sleep, right? So who else are we divvying this out to? Now, I'll tell you that part of your team, I hope, is a really good quality ABA provider, because they're going to take a chunk of those hours. So often, I'll be talking to a family who's gotten a recent diagnosis and maybe they have a little child. It's so individual, you guys. But if we have a little, boy or girl who's around 3 or 4 and they've just gotten the diagnosis, I will say to that parent, oh, please maximize your ABA hours. Find good ABA. Oh, that's important. That's a big asterisk. But if you have good ABA, hopefully they're going to say that they want your child somewhere between 30 and 40 hours a week. And I know that we all, myself included, the first time that somebody said that to me, I said, you're out of your mind. That's a full-time job. 40 hours, when does he get to be a kiddo? And then I saw what the therapy was, and he was in this just amazing, educationally enriched environment. And I came to realize, okay, for him, it was 40 hours a week. And then I just had to fill the rest of the hours. And boy, what a relief to know that somebody else, and by the way, I was often watching on a baby monitor, but that somebody else who had all this energy could come in and do all these things to help him to learn and grow. And they took that responsibility for 40 hours. What a relief, that was. So while and by the way, this also goes for other therapies too. It's just you're not going to get as much of them in the world. You're not. I love a good speech and language pathologist, an SLP, and but you're probably going to get funding from your school or from your insurance for an hour a week of that. I've heard of a couple families getting 2 hours a week, and that's important. It's just if you're building out how do we fill every hour, I really encourage you. ABA is the gold standard. It's been found to be very effective at doing this and creating real progress. But build your team. And sometimes your team, it's your significant other, and while you want to spend time with your parent as parents together with this child, you're going to tag team some things and say, I've got this period of time that I'm responsible for, but when things, you get tired or things get heated, my husband and I would always be like, tag, you're in. I gotta take a few minutes, right? And I know not everybody has that, but ask yourself, who can I put on this team to fill this time for my child so that every waking hour is an educationally enriched, fun environment. Lee says, great topic. Sensory overload was a big issue with my daughter when she was younger. Music was always a key element that helped my daughter adapt to different surroundings. It's my first time tuning in, and you are terrific. Well, you are too, Lee. I love hearing from you. Thank you so much. And let me know as we go through, because it's good to hear what resonates, because let's remember, it's not a one size fits all. And by the way, I tried really hard to make these topics broad enough so that we could talk about, are we talking about a 3-year-old or are we talking about a 33-year-old? So and when I'm talking about each thing, if I'm leaving your demographic out, let me know. And I'll give you an example of how this works for another age. And just while I'm talking about that, I just talked about for younger kids, right? Once your kids go to school, the team looks different, right? Once our kids are done with the school system and they're 21, the team looks really different. But a lot of times families think, oh, well, I don't have a team later on. It's important to create the team. And sometimes that's through funding. I love in the state of California, we have self-determination, where you can be a part of figuring out what they get to be a part of figuring. That's why it's self-determination about what they want to do and what supports. But no matter where you live, you can create a team. And it's important to be thinking that way, because I just don't know anybody who can do it full-time, all the time, full tilt, and get to the success that you want to get to, which is critical. Okay, so let's go on to number 2. We want to utilize technology. Now, I say this and sometimes people cringe and go, oh, but our kids are so into screen time anyway. Well, yeah, they are. And they are because it's a whole world for them. And they feel very passionately about it. So my thing is, why aren't we using that to their best chance? We have lists, and there are websites just devoted to this, and all the apps that are really good and teach all kinds of things. But now I'm also going to say something, and then feel free to hate me. But a lot of what our kids get to be in the teen years, a lot of the socialization now, we can debate whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, but it's around video games. And that isn't just for the boys, that's also for the girls. That some of the way they socially interact is around video games. I don't know about you, but I'm old enough that when I was a kid, we were out playing in the woods. And then when we got a little older in the teen years, we were hanging out and not really doing things that were good for us or anybody else. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not as down on the video games as I think everyone would like for me to be. However, I'm about choosing the right video game. That I always talk about scribble knots. When my son was in elementary school, spelling was not his forte. And then he was playing an app that was called Scribble Knots. And it's a little character that is got to accomplish these things, and they get to a problem in the game, and they have to solve the problem. But in order to do that, they have to type in what the thing is that they need. And they have to spell it correctly, or the game doesn't continue. And suddenly, my son became a little sponge. I just remember being in the car one time, and he was like, how do you spell sarcophagus? It's like, I don't even know. But let's try. And we tried it like 3 different ways. Dad's a great speller, so Dad was able to tell him, and it solved the puzzle. And I was like, why in the world did you need a sarcophagus? And how did you know what a sarcophagus? He was probably in 2nd grade. And I was like, how did you even know what a sarcophagus was? And he had found that out from another video game. There are times in my son's life where I've heard him talk about things that I'm like, where did you learn about that? Did they teach you that in school? And he'll say, oh, no, no, no. I learned about that from this and so video game. There was a game that I really didn't like that he was playing. I think it was Little Big Planet, but I might be wrong. But I think that was the game where he learned all of these famous people in history. Like he knew who Shakespeare was, he knew who Isaac Newton was, and he knew what they had done and what their contribution was from playing that video game. So by the time he got into 11th grade, and at his 11th grade, they would do this big dinner where you had to pick somebody in history to be, and you come to the dinner party as that person. He was all ready. He knew who everybody was, and because of a video game. So we were a little bit sensitive about making sure that there was an educational component to video games. My husband was more in charge of that than I was. And, he picked some things that I would not have necessarily agreed with. But technology can be a huge, huge help. And even the television. During COVID, we made huge lists of programs on PBS was killing it. PBS put out so much stuff and put out additional channels that are still around that have all kinds of everything from learning yoga to, learning social. If you don't watch Daniel Tiger teaches all kinds of social things. Oh, it's so good, you guys. So, sometimes when I'm talking to parents and they're saying, I need a break. Shannon, when do I get downtime? I'm like, first of all, let's talk about the car. In the car, there needs to be something going on. Now, Lee had written to us about music. Well, the car is an ideal time to be playing all kinds of music. And that can be just listening to it. But it also, I've found over the years that if I'm playing classical music in the car, that all of us in the car will be like, what is the name of that? And eventually they'll tell you depending on how you're listening to it. That's educational. How about just listening to oldies? I love that I got to introduce my son to 70s and 80s music in the car. He knows who OMD is because of listening to music in the car. And if you don't know, OMD is Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. And my favorite song of theirs is Enola Gay, which then my son started asking questions. He goes, what's Enola Gay? Why are they singing it? Well, Enola Gay is the name of the plane that dropped one of the bombs on Hiroshima. And he did a whole bunch of research on that. So music can be this great stepping stone. We don't have to constantly, be doing other things in the car, but music can be this gateway to all kinds of things. But it's not the only thing in the car. Sometimes you just need silence in the car, but there are apps on your phone or your child's iPad or their other device that are so educational. CARD put out an app. If you have very young kids that are trying to learn language, I always say Camp Discovery. We don't push Camp Discovery because it only goes up to a certain point. So we don't talk about it endlessly, but if your child is trying to learn the beginnings of language, Camp Discovery, it's free. You can download it and the game, Apple, whichever device, and your child can be doing that while you're driving the car and having a down moment, but they're learning. So however you choose to utilize technology, when our kids get older, depending on what their passion is, there's always a technology component that can help them. I love Khan Academy so much. Temple Grandin is the one. Yes, I will find that list of educational video games and I will post it on our Facebook page. Thank you for asking for that, Porter. I love Khan Academy. It's free. You can sign up your child. And talk about a fun, educationally enriched environment. You can choose from pre-K up through, graduate school level on a wide variety of subjects. And they teach it in little, small snippets. Whether, you're having trouble at school. This is the cheat that I did. That when my son was doing math, once he got into like 4th grade, the math was past where I really remembered it being. Just keeping it real, I'm not a math person. But so he would come home and he'd be doing like dividing fractions, and I would just sit at the table and cry. And because I wouldn't know how to tell him how to do it, and he didn't remember what the teacher said. And then Temple Grandin turned me on to Khan Academy. So I had an account, and I would just go in and I would look up, okay, fourth grade math, how do you divide fractions? And I would watch a 2-minute video, which was fun, a fun video. And this is me, the non-math person, telling you that. And then I would be able to explain it to him. But then I started just showing him, and he had his own Khan Academy account, and he learned how to do, how to program animation, which is math. I did not know that, but it was math, and it helped him so much by the time he got to junior high. It's free. Khan Academy, Khan Academy, and I think it's .org. Brilliant. They will ask you if you want to make donations to their Patreon, but it's not required. And I love telling parents, get yourself an account and get your child account, and you can have oversight of your child's account so that you can see how fast they're learning. I also love this. It shows you like a short video, and then it makes you demonstrate your knowledge. So it doesn't do like a test. It makes you demonstrate the knowledge, and it notices if you're struggling. And then it will give you an additional lesson where it explains it slightly different. So that the part that you're missing, it's smart technology, and it catches your child exactly where they are. It's brilliant. So check that out. Khan, Khan Academy. So utilize technology in every single way. When one of the things that I loved, and it's very controversial, I'm just going to bring that up right now. There was an app, and it was like Talking Tomcat, and there are probably 100 different iterations of it now. But it was a cat on the app, and I would give my son my phone, and the cat would be there, and my son would say something, and then the cat would repeat it in the cat voice, right? Everybody goes, well, how would that be helpful? Except that, my son was speaking, but nobody was understanding him. Like his friends weren't understanding, and I was trying to work with him on the articulation and the diction of it. And I was trying to make it fun, but it was not as much fun to him as this cat. So he would say something to the cat, and then the cat repeats it back in a slightly different voice. And then he would hear, oh, that's not clear enough. So then he would say it again, and he would articulate. He was building the muscles to be able to communicate from a cat. Now, there are people who don't love the cat app because it has in the past picked up recordings in the back while it's recording the child's voice. Be aware of that. You decide, but I thought it was brilliant. And I wasn't saying anything that I cared about anybody listening to. If that is not your deal, something else. But there's so much technology that's out there that will allow your child to be in an educationally enriched environment while you take a shower, while you drive the car, while you cook dinner, while you help another child that you have, right? And it's very fun. So don't be afraid of technology. Just be mindful of how you use it. Okay, I got to go faster, or we're never going to get there. Number 3, don't try to invent the wheel. Oh my gosh. I don't know about you, but in my sleep-deprived state, I remember thinking I should try to invent an intervention for my child to help him, because I was too tired to realize that, first of all, I couldn't. And second of all, you don't need to. There's so much information that's out there about creating an educationally enriched environment. There's the skills for autism that you can find all the lessons to teach anything. Even if you have an older child, there's skills for living, teach everything, right? You could subscribe to that. The truth is there's all kinds of places where you can find all kinds of things. My favorite thing is Pinterest. There's a whole lot of teachers that are out there. First of all, there's a lot of amazing moms who just post free things on Pinterest. You can put in any topic into Pinterest. And for a while, I was keeping that we have an Autism-live page on Pinterest, and it still has good resources, but I just haven't had the time to keep up on it because I literally go down the rabbit hole too. But you could put in, whatever. If your child, you found out that they have low muscle tone. And in the beginning, you were like, I don't really know what that means, and I don't think it really has that much to do with anything. And then you found out, oh, if my child has low muscle tone, it's going to be harder for them to read and harder for them to write. This actually impacts them. So how do I work on low muscle tone? And, you end up asking the OT, but it's not that fun. Oh, put low muscle tone into Pinterest and see what comes up. And they'll have everything under the sun, free lessons. But then there's also teachers have taken to Pinterest to just make a little bit of extra money because, teachers don't get paid well. So they will put a whole bunch of things that are wonderful, whether it's something, it's a lesson and you can, like it's things to cut out to make an art project or whatever, and you pay them $1.45 and you get the downloadable. It's very inexpensive. So, Pinterest, but a lot of it is free and some of it is just so low cost and you're helping a teacher. So give up the idea that you're going to invent the wheel, right? Just let it go. Let it go. You don't have to. I have a friend who would always say to me, well, you know what, Shannon, but you're a former teacher, so you know more about these things than I do. This is why we're doing the show, because you don't have to know. You don't have to know. You just got to find where the pockets of knowledge are. And I'm telling you, Pinterest, of course, there's other places too, but Pinterest is, do that for the next 6 months and you'll be having a party. Check it out. But let go of the idea that you were supposed to know when your child came out how to make a full-time educationally enriched environment. No, that's not expected of you. Okay, but one of the biggest things that's going to help you is to use a visual schedule. It's going to help you and it's going to help your child. So instead of just looking at loads and loads and loads of time, you're going to make yourself a calendar. Now, you can just buy a calendar, or you can download an app with a calendar, or you can, I like things that are big and visual. On the wall in my office, I have a huge, the year in a glance calendar, because I need to be able to see it, I'm a visual person. Well, a lot of our kids are visual too, right? Although they like technology, they might like on the app as much as on the wall. And when my son was little, I used to go to the dollar store and get really inexpensive wrapping paper. It didn't matter what it had on one side because the other side's white. And I would take a piece of it and I would, put it against the wall and we would draw projects on it, but I could also make a schedule on it, so that I could figure out what are we doing at any given time. And that was more for me, but it was helpful for my son too, because you want to get a feel for, because you don't want to be caught flat-footed when all of a sudden you've got a whole bunch of time and nothing to do. So giving a schedule to our kiddos, though, helps them to organize and know what's going to happen. There's a million different ways to do it. When our kids are old enough, at which I believe is the minute they understand what they liked, which could be 2, we want to give them choices always. Right. So we had a calendar, but then we had a bunch of potential things. And together we could pick and say, like in the summer, that we would make the schedule for the day. And I would say, okay, here are the 8 things that you have to choose from. And you got 6 spots. What do you want to do? And he started to understand the times of the day just through that calendar. And he would take swimming and he would put it where he wanted it to be. Right. And that's good for them. But then, maybe he would take, school lessons and he would put that where he wanted it to be. And maybe we would do nature walk or we would have art project or whatever. And he could decide where he wanted it to go. And it helped both of us. Now, here's the trick with visual schedules or any kind of scheduling, is that it's there to help you, not to tie you to a tree and say, we're going to beat you up, So if you find that, it gets to be 2:00 and you don't feel like going swimming, right? Or it's too hot or it's raining and thunder and lightning, you can always choose to change something on the calendar, and that helps your child to work on flexibility, right? But having the visual representation of it automatically ratchets down everybody's anxiety. Having choice about when and where, even more, that anxiety goes down. And then having the ability that if you need to change something, hopefully that gives you all a breath. And again, it works on flexibility for your child. So I know every year, especially around break time, I say to parents, I'm begging you, I'm pleading you, give yourself a visual schedule. And everybody feels like it's a lot of work. But what do you like? Like, give me a whiteboard and a bunch of markers and I'm happy, you know? But other people, if it's magnets, you can do it on the back of a cookie sheet. You know, what is going to make it reinforcing for you? If it's on your phone, is it better for you? Do you like to do things that way? Or ask yourself that and make it like that, because otherwise I don't think that you will do it. And however you do it, it's going to morph and change according to what your child or children like. But I promise you, if you do a visual schedule, it's really good. It doesn't take that long to set it up. And then once you do, it's so much easier. So much easier. Okay, on to 5. We're only at 5. Give choices. We just talked about this. Whenever possible, give choices, because that reduces stress. So often we see when kids get discombobulated, it's because they don't feel like they have agency. Think about the existence of a kid anyway. It's I'm being dragged here, there. When did anybody ask me what I want? Give choices. And the older a child gets, the more important this is. If you have a 16-year-old who's just really having a hard time, find the way to give choices all the time. Now, sometimes the choices are between two things that you know that they don't want. That's okay. Still give them the choice. That's important. It's always important. Okay, on to number 6. Play games. Now, games can be just something silly. Like we used to, in the car, play a game to see how long it was going to take before the light would turn green. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but then we started doing a thing where we would laugh at the light because we believed it would make it turn faster. So we would do this fake ha laugh at the light. It was fun. We don't do it anymore, of course, but there were like a couple of years when that was a big deal. When we'd be in line at the grocery store and I would feel him starting to be like, this is too much sensory, we would play I Spy. I spy with my little eye something that's red, and then he would have to be looking everywhere to find what was red. But what that gave him was an escape route. And again, it would calm all that sensory that was starting to make his, all of his hackles rise, and he would have something else to focus on. And it was fun because he would always win, right? Even if I had to give him a clue, he would always win, and it would pass the time and we would get through the grocery line. Yeah. But there are so many other games, everything from Monopoly to dominoes. The list is endless. And I know some of you are like, oh, my kid is too little, or oh, my kid is nonverbal. Oh, my friends, check out our toy guide. We have something for everyone. Games are an important part of life. They teach all kinds of skills, like social skills, how to be a good winner, how to be a good loser, how to count. We did the dominoes. I love playing dominoes, and we learned colors and we learned numbers from playing dominoes. So, and we also learned strategy depending on what game you're playing with dominoes. So it's just such a huge area. I could spend the next 6 months just talking about games, but there's everything under the sun. And games help to pass time when we're in a social situation where there's a lot of sensory stuff going on. Games are great to teach. Games are great to reduce stress and to find the way to leisure activities. When our kids get older, it's really important that we have built in enough leisure activities so that they can take care of themselves. Think about yourself and what you do, during your leisure activity. I know that for my son and his friends, they are very, D&D was a very big thing for a while. Now it's Warhammer. This is how they connect. And I mentioned before that video games, big way that our kids connect. It's a stress reducer. So it's social and it's downtime. So we want to give them lots of opportunities to play lots of different things. So play games. Whenever possible, play games. Porter said, yes, visual schedules are amazing. They are. Okay, on to number 7, shop. I know this sounds weird, but sometimes we take our kids shopping. And I remember my son used to have, oh, it's horrible, right? I just couldn't wait to have a child. And I was so excited, go to the grocery store and you put them in the cart. And I don't know, it was a mommy thing for me. And he would melt down, have a complete and total meltdown. And I was like, what am I doing wrong here? Well, I had finally an ABA therapist go with me. He was a little bit older by that point and was not in the cart so much anymore. But taught him how to keep his hand on the cart, how to connect, how we shop together at any age, at any level, that we want to be encouraging them, because it's all about wants and desires and choosing. If they're going to grab the colorful package in the beginning, right? The thing that they want, but it's an ideal time to be learning all kinds of things. So one of the things that we started to do in the grocery store is like a treasure hunt, right? I was really big on saying to my son, we're going to eat the rainbow this week. So we go to the grocery store and we go through the produce aisles, and I would say, okay, we're going to eat the rainbow. So first we got to find, what are we going to eat that's red? Now we're in a treasure hunt, and he's learning the names of the vegetables, and we're talking about colors and all the things, right? But he's also learning about preference. And they're picking up like sponges. When they're keyed in, they pick up all kinds of things. Now, when kids are older, we're teaching them how to comparison shop. If this is $3.54 and this is $4.54, how many ounces? And where on that little tag does it say, here is how much it is per ounce? I didn't learn that until they were teaching it to my son. Thank you. But it's educational, right? And it's fun for them because they're getting to choose, which is amazing. So shopping is a good thing to take. That if we make it an educationally enriched environment, that includes the paying, whether that's, most of us are using our cards at the checkout, but that's a thing our kids need to learn. Giving very little kids and saying, giving them the card and say, okay, which side do you stick in? They love it. They just love it. So important to teach all the things around shopping, and that is part of their educationally enriched environment. Are you going through a drive-through? Like helping them to see the menu and pick the thing that they want. And as they get older, being able to request that either with their iPad or, having the ability to tell you with their PEC system or the words to say it. I mean, I remember in the beginning, we would go to In-N-Out Burger, and it was so overwhelming. But, they would say, can I help you? And my son had his whole thing memorized, and it was so overwhelming. And now he's just, it's a skill that's his. But it is part of their educationally enriched environment to teach them how to do that. Little baby steps along the way. Let's go on to number 8, play a game. I guess that kind of, goes along with playing games, but anything can be a game that, depending on what your kiddo likes. Let's say, what's the task in the morning? You have to get up and you have to brush your teeth and you have to get dressed. Okay, well, that's kind of boring day in and day out, but can you make that a game? Can we race? Can we see, I'm going to be doing the same thing, and can we see who can be, or against brother? Okay, so everybody has to brush your teeth, and you got to brush them well, and you maybe set a time limit, that you got to brush for at least a minute, however long the time is, but you have to, get dressed, have your shoes on the right feet, and at the breakfast table, and whoever is first gets to pick, I don't know, what music we listen to during breakfast, whatever's meaningful to your kids. Change anything that is a task that we think is going to be overwhelming into some sort of a game. Now, some kids don't like to be rushed, so that would not be the game to play with them. My son loved to race everything. We were living in a condo, and I would have to buy groceries and get them out of the car and walk them up the walk to the condo and up the top, to get to the condo to drop them off. And I had this little toddler who would elope. So I was like, I'm never going to be able to get a big load of groceries in this house. It was just, mind blowing. And then they taught me how to turn it into a game, that we would get one bag of groceries out and we would stand there on the sidewalk and I would say, ready, set, go. And he knew the path to get up to the condo to race me. And if I could get there with a bag of groceries first, you had to tag the door and wait for the other person. But it was a way to keep him on task so that I could get the groceries in the house. He loved it. Absolutely loved it. So turn anything that you have that's overwhelming into a game. But the game has to have rules that are fair. You want them to win as often as possible, especially if the thing that you're trying to get them to do is to complete a task that wasn't desirable, right? Make the rules so that they could win, and have whatever the winning is be something that's meaningful to them today. That's really the key. Turn anything you want into a game. I said he wasn't a good speller. It wasn't his thing. And we would get the spelling list every week. And so we would be in the car, and we had those little seaweed snacks, right? And so I would say the word, and he would have to spell it. And if he spelled it correctly, I would be like, yes. And I would hand him a seaweed snack in the back, and I would sing this song. Na, 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 na. And I don't know why, but that made it fun to do the spelling. And we would do it every day in the car, and he would know those words by the end of the week. So turn it into a game. Whatever that means, make it up, turn the activity into a game. Okay, on to number 9. Get physical. I can hear Olivia Newton-John singing in the background. And make the physical fun. If you've got access to a swimming pool, oh, how lucky you are, right? Because the water is something that's really good for our kids, and teaching them water safety critical anyway, right? But you can play so many games in the pool. Oh my goodness, you can play so many games in the pool. You can take pool activities and make it so much fun. But if you don't have access to a swimming pool, or you don't live in Southern California and it's not heated and you can't be in it all the time, there's a million other things that you can do. But get physical. If it's snowing outside and you can't get outside, I love during COVID, we learned and put out so many different things to do. But my favorite by far is making an obstacle course in your house, or if you've got multiple kids, get that laundry basket out, right? Put one of them in the laundry basket and make the other one, tell them you're making a Disneyland ride and drag them all over the house and point out the fake Disneyland attractions that are there. We're learning pretending play. We're using creativity. We're learning how to present things while we're using the big muscles to drag the other kid around and then make them switch places. Our kids, well, everyone needs a certain amount of physical to be able to calm down and be centered, right? So we got to give them that opportunity, but it's also a learning opportunity too. And a lot of studies have shown, I haven't bought one of them yet, but I really want one now. They're like almost affordable. I don't know if you've seen them this holiday season. They're round things that you hang on the wall, and they have numbered pads, and you can play music and you punch the pads they light up. Well, I remember us showing a person who invented this probably 11 years ago on the show, but it was this $20,000 piece of equipment that gyms had to lease, but they did studies on it, and it really was part of this trend that what we found is that anytime you cross the midline, so with tennis, you cross the midline, with ping pong, you cross the midline. There's a whole bunch of sports that you cross the midline. Certainly boxing, when you're crossing the midline, it helps your brain. It has been shown to have huge cognitive positive effects. So get them physical, get them crossing the midline, whatever you got to do, get them sweating, get them, they will be able to self-regulate so much better. Our family really learned that during COVID because we were getting stir crazy, and we bought a treadmill and we put it in the middle of the living room for COVID. And my family, who's not big on going to the gym or whatever, and every day, we'd be we watched Game of Thrones or something like that. And we would take turns getting on the treadmill as a family, taking turns. And I lost a bunch of weight. My husband lost a bunch of weight. We felt better. Then COVID ended and the treadmill sits there, but get your kids physical. Don't do what I did and stop. Okay, moving on to number 10. Cook something. Now, you got to cook something a couple of times a day anyway, unless you're ordering in for everything, which gets expensive. But, a lot of times we think, well, I got to occupy them while I go cook something. And sometimes you do have to do that. But sometimes invite them into the kitchen and show them different things and have them smell them and taste them. I'll tell you something, in the kitchen, you're learning multisensorial, all kinds of things. You're learning safety, you're learning math, because, 1 teaspoon is different than 2 tablespoons, right? It's such an enriched environment for them. And it also helps them to independence. And there is something about that all of our kids get. Like, if I am able to feed myself, there's pride in that and self-esteem in that. So start with something super simple. There are tools that you can buy online, like knives that you really can't cut anything but bread with, right? There are cutting gloves that you can give your child so that they're not cutting off their finger while they're using an actual knife. There's all kinds of safety things so that your child can be safe in the kitchen. And if you have to put some baby locks on things so that they can't get into just anything, but it's so good for them at every age to learn how to cook something. So do it. It's fun. Educationally enriched, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. How about going to the public library? And I love going to the library and just turning them loose in whatever section is appropriate for them and giving them a number. I want you to go pick 8 books. And maybe we don't take them all home. Maybe we read 1 in the library and we take, 6 home. I don't know what your local library allows, but going to the library gives you free choice for them to pick the kinds of things that they're interested in. But while you're there, ask them about their schedule for kids your child's age. Almost all public libraries have some sort of public outreach that they're doing. They stopped doing it during COVID. They're doing it again. It's all free and it's freaking fabulous, you guys. We used to go and we had so many libraries in our area that each one of them had a different schedule. There was one library that we would go to on Friday afternoons and they had a Minecraft group that he could go in, sign out a computer, and they would have a mission and 20 kids would play a Minecraft game together. Stop it. For free. Hold the phone. So good. That's an educationally enriched environment, and I would sit there and read my book while he was doing that. Woohoo! That's a win, my friends. But there's other things too. When he was littler, well, first of all, they had a Lego club, they had a chess club, they had a robotics club, all for free. There were times where we would go and they would just be doing a performance and we would see a magician. What? Oh my goodness. Oh, social time, watching a performance, it's all good. So check out your local library and see what they have going on, because you can add that to your schedule, and that's time when you can take a breath. Okay, on to number 12. We're getting there. Read together. If you watch the show, I think that this is a big, big deal. Wherever your child is in the beginning, we just read to them. And you know that I've said that if it's hard for your child to sit still, figure out something to give them to put in their hands. My mother told me this years ago because my son was busy pants, and she said, give him a cold apple. I don't know why. It worked. It worked. He could sit, and I had to make it interactive, but he could sit if he had a cold apple in his hands. I don't know. Somebody can explain that to me. But give them something. Sometimes it's a snuffy animal to hold on to, a blanket, whatever, but you got to make it interactive. And sometimes that's just asking questions like, where's the dog? Point to the dog, and you take their finger and you point to the dog and you go, yes, that's the dog, right? That's when they're really little and just learning how to read. But as they progress, more and more you make it their responsibility. And you ask questions like, what do you think's going to happen? How do you think they're going to get out of that, right? Because you're building reading comprehension. And you got to use different voices. I know that for some of you, you're like, I don't know how to do that. No one's going to grade you. No one's going to judge you. It's time to be with your child and have fun and be silly. And you can do it. I know that you can. And if all of your characters have the exact same voice, who's going to know? But use voices. And and change your voice when you're speaking in dialogue. It helps your child to tune into that. But as your child gets better, you're going to have them read one word, then two words, and then more words, right? And eventually you get to the point where your child is reading out loud. That's one of the best things you can do for your child if they're, in school at all, is being able to read out loud. Oh gosh, it's a good skill. Okay, on to number 13, feed and expand interests. Oh my gosh, Dr. Temple Grandin has so much to say about this, but in the beginning, you may not know what your child really loves, right? But as you take them to things like the library activities and some of the other things we're about to talk to, you're going to start to see who your child is. What do they love? What are they interested in? What do they fixate on? Now, there's a whole bunch of people who say, oh, well, fixation, perseveration, obsession, not good. And I just want to say, well, there's a fine line between passion and those things. And what we want to do is not be in the place where they're not able to not focus on it. But what we can do to help that is, let's say, for instance, I gave you the train tracks here. A lot of our younger kids are really into trains, and everybody says, oh, where's that going to go? And if we give them lots and lots of opportunities and stretch that interest like it's pizza dough, then it can go all kinds of places, right? Trains still exist. They still need conductors on trains. They need engineers on trains. There's all kinds of different things that can happen with trains. But if we're only into Thomas the Tank, then we have a much more limited, although I have a friend who went in and consulted with Thomas the Tank because he's such an enthusiast about Thomas the Tank, right? And he went in and consulted with the writing team about things that he would want to see. But that's not going to be everybody, right? But if we stretch that and teach them more about other kinds of trains and other kinds of transportation, then we get further. But feed the passion. Years ago, when my son was just diagnosed, somebody gave me the book A Real Boy by Christina Adams. And I learned so much from that book. It really changed my life. And Christina's been a guest and she's done segments for us before. She's just brilliant. But in her story, she talks about how her son was kind of into airplanes. And so she did this amazing thing where she started taking him to the local airport to watch planes take off. Well, he really loved that. So she decided, okay, well, I want to find a pilot who's got a plane and I want him to show him his plane and show him the different things. And then it was, well, I want him to be able to fly with the pilot. And then it was, does he want to learn how to be a pilot? And at each step along the way, she just said, I'm not going to put anything on it. I'm just going to see where his interests were. Now, I'm going to tell you the end of the story. He didn't become a pilot, but he went on to do so many other things. But he's just a person who loves planes, and she fed that interest. And I think as parents, we have a responsibility to do that, but not just feed the interest, but expand it so that it isn't just toy planes. Let's take them to the museum and see the planes, whatever it is. Okay, moving on. Pretend. Oh, I love this picture. For those of you listening in podcast, it's a dad sitting on the couch with two small kids, and they all have their raincoats on, and they have fake fishing poles and fake fish at the end of them, and they're pretending that the carpet is water that they're fishing in. I love this. This builds, flexibility with a brain. It allows for creativity. It just expands new environments for your child. So when all else fails, pretend. I'll tell you, this was the thing as an aunt that I knew how to do. I didn't have my child till I was already 40 when he was born, about to be 41. But for years before that, I was a good aunt, and we would pretend all the time. I would pretend that I had a green car. I didn't have a car, and we would pretend to drive it around the block. Pretend in any way possible. Like sometimes we'd be in a grocery store and somebody would be cantankerous, and I would say, let's walk through this aisle of the grocery store and pretend we're walking in Jell-O. And if you can get them to play and pretend, it passes the time and it reduces the sensory stuff and it's educationally enriching. So have fun, pretend. On to 15. We got to pedal to the metal. Be silly. Whatever you do, have the opportunity to be silly with your kids because they need to know that sometimes they can be silly. A lot of our kids are so rule-oriented, and that's because of anxiety. But if we can help them to be a little flexible by being a little silly sometimes, like doing pretend voices. Even when my son was a teenager, when we were traveling, we would stop at a truck stop or whatever, and I'd say, let's go in. He was learning accents in his accent class and dialects. And so I would say, okay, which dialect should we do? Should we go in and be Irish in this trust? We were being silly, and we would have our Irish dialects in the truck stop, but it was fun and educational. It passes the time, and it teaches flexibility. You can be so silly with little kids. It's just the best time. Allow yourself that. Have a happy life. Number 16, drill, but fun. So sometimes there are things that our kids need to learn at school that are just memorization stuff, like the spelling stuff, like the multiplication table, like, just math facts, right? Or how about the states and the state capitals, right? So those kinds of things, we know we have to drill them, but it's our responsibility to make them as fun as possible. My niece sings a song that I'm never but it has all of the state capitals in it. It's hilarious. I don't think I could learn it, but it's hilarious. And she knows them. She's never going to have to relearn them, right? I've said how we did the spelling words, but if there's something you have to drill, like the math facts, don't expect your kid to just want to be able to rote memorize. It's not fun. Make it fun. And if you don't know how to, I could tell you 10 different ways, but go to Pinterest and put in fun ways to learn to memorize multiplication tables. And those teachers and those moms have you 68 ways from Sunday. So anything you got to drill, but make it fun. All right, 17, build. Building is a great skill for any kids to have. I put a sandcastle here, but you can use Legos, you can use Duplos, you can use sand and mud, you can use sticks. I love at all those STEM conferences, they give people spaghetti noodles and marshmallows. My son has had to do the challenge, the earthquake challenge, where you have to take graham crackers and build a structure that if you shake the pan, it doesn't fall down. Use whatever you have, get creative, but build. It's problem solving, it's social. It's a lot of times our kids are good at figuring that kind of stuff out. It's why so many of them become engineers. So build. And if you can, go to the beach, build the sandcastle. It's a good time. Number 18, create. I love to have an art project around just on hand. A lot of the stuff that we do in the toy guide, I say, have this for a rainy day when your plans got canceled for 2 hours. But the truth of the matter is that you can do this with almost anything. We used to do a thing where I learned this from a PBS show where we had newspaper. So all the extra newspaper that we would have, and you would roll it and take some duct tape and wrap it around the newspaper, and then you could mold it into different things. It would become like moldable clay when you've got the duct tape on it. So you can do it with almost anything. We used to make there was one time when we just cut up all the magazines that we had looking for people's faces. And my son helped us, so he was learning cutting skills. But then we made flashcards and we're like, what emotion is this face? Oh, that's somebody being surprised. So then we would write the word surprised on it. And he learned it that much faster because he helped us cut out the picture. He helped label it. He watched me putting the letters, and then we would show it and say, what's this? This is surprise. Boom. Now, could I have gone and bought the flashcards? Sure. I think he learned it faster because he was participating in it. So create. If you don't have the paper, again, dollar store, go get the wrapping paper, and it's a big piece of paper. He used to have the little robots that you could program according to color, that you take a marker and you put it on paper, and then the robot will go there. I don't remember what those were called, but we used to make big, huge tracks on the back of wrapping paper to program the robot to do all kinds of things. Good times. You can make your child loves the little matchbox cars. Take the wrapping paper, put it on the table, and make a whole village for them to be able to run their cars on. Dollar store. It's a good time. And get some markers. It's a very good time. Number 19, hear and tell stories. If you have the opportunity, like at the library or local performance, a lot of times people say to me, oh, I can't take my kid to the theater or to a movie because of all the sensory issues. There's all kinds of ways around that. Noise canceling headphones. Before we had those, before we knew those were a thing, my son had one of those hats that has the flaps that we could put the flaps up or put the flaps down if it was too loud. And nobody said anything about that. And, be prepared. Sit on the aisle. And if your child's having a hard time, excuse yourself and go to another area. But having your child tell them stories, have them hear other people tell stories. It's a really good thing. If there's a story hour at your local bookstore, I hope you have a local bookstore anymore. Sometimes there are people who come in and read to the kids. It's so good. No matter what age, we all have the capacity to hear a story, right? And then we want to encourage them to tell stories. I have a story that I always tell little kids when I meet them. And they always ask me to tell it 3 times, and then they want to tell it, and it cracks me up every time. Sometime I'll tell the story. It's a very silly story. Short story about Wally the Worm. But it's a skill for them to be, and I don't ask them to tell the story. I don't ask them to ask me to tell it 3 times, but it's a funny story, and they want to be able to tell the story. So hear and tell stories. Number 20, explore nature. Make that a part of everything that you do. It's not just walking. It's not just hiking. Whether it's that you have a treasure hunt list that you hand out before you go and it's got a picture of, we want to find 1 acorn, or we want to find 1 blade of grass, or we got to find 1 leaf, right? And it can be a picture or words or whatever. Or you can just go and while you're on the trip say, okay, I'm going to find 2 things, you find 2 things. Allow them to feel the environment around them and notice it. When Jem was 5, we were on a trip that was very stressful because my nephew's baby was born and we didn't know if the baby was going to survive. It was very stressful. And I needed to keep him entertained while we were visiting and at the hospital. And I gave him a camera. I had this old Kodak camera and he was 5 and I gave it to him and we would go out around the hospital and he would take pictures. And what I found was that I got to see his point of view. And it was the most beautiful thing. But I needed for him to connect. And he loved to take pictures of drains. We made a coffee table book out of it and it's one of the most precious things that I own because it shows his point of view at a particular age. But some of it is like multiple pictures of drains. But I got to see his point of view. But we wouldn't have done that if we weren't forced to explore nature. And again, part of the way he did it was with the camera. That made it easier for him to be like, take a picture. What are you noticing? Super cool. But go be in nature. It will be good for them. They'll sleep better. You'll sleep better. So I hope this helps. There's so many ways to make an educationally enriched environment. It is not all on YouTube. Please don't invent that wheel. There's so much help. I will post in the next couple of days. I got to find the list of the educational video games. It's going to be a little outdated because it's 6 years old, but it'll be a great place for you to start. And maybe you can tell us some things that we have to add to it. All right. I just respect, admire, and adore all of you and what you're doing. And it matters. Can I just tell you what you do, or what you're doing right now and how you connect with your child? It matters. And it doesn't just matter to you and your child, but doesn't it matter a lot for you and your child? But it's how we make this world a better place. That connection that you have with your child and learning who they are and helping them to discover who that is. And you allowing yourself to be surprised and thrilled to find out all the things that your child is interested in. It's all about exposure. I always talk about in close to us in Pasadena, they used to, I don't know if they do it anymore, but they had a musical petting zoo where once a month the kids could come in and they would have every instrument from the orchestra and the kids could try whatever they wanted to. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun and brilliant and wonderful. And I would think, oh, this is all about exposure. Like, what can I possibly expose this child to see what it is they absolutely go, that. I want more of that. That's what we want. Okay, I got to go. Oh, thank you. Somebody said that this was so helpful. Thank you. Sending you a hug. All right. We're back next Tuesday with Dr. Grant Pichet and another show on Wednesday. I want to remind everybody we have, I don't know whether it's next Wednesday or the one after, that we have Brad Levy from EEG Go. We're going to talk about how you get one of those EEGs where you staying in your house, not having to go someplace else, and you're getting around the clock EEG. It's so important. So stay tuned for that. It might be this coming up week. I'm not sure. Anyway, until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.